I am late with the promised video. I went about 6 weeks instead of a month, not saying anything. And the reason why is because of accountability. I knew that when I sat down to make this video, I would have to explain to you why I haven't been getting anything done. And if you were my boss and after 6 weeks you said, "Hey, how are you doing on this project?" And I said, haven't really done anything. I read a little bit, I made a couple of starts at it, I'd be fired. Fortunately, my husband isn't really into firing me, so we're good there. On the other hand, I think that I have definitely demonstrated that I need more than monthly accountability. I have recognized that I am scared of screwing a business venture up, which makes me very, very normal for an entrepreneur on the internet, or possibly just entrepreneurs in general. And so monthly accountability isn't enough. Weekly accountability isn't even necessarily enough because I let myself get crunched for time, and basically all I'm doing is rewriting to-do lists, which I've done for years. And so I may have to go to daily accountability and just start asking myself, what do I have to do differently tomorrow to make it better than today has been? And that doesn't mean today was bad or useless, but it does mean that I have to retrain my brain to hold myself accountable for how I allocate my time. I did do a sort of half-hearted yearly review, and in some ways it was very, very good for me because it reminded me of some things that I have kind of forgotten. It does possibly mean that maybe my business isn't going to be quite as focused or even top priority as I had hoped it would be. But as I started going through this review, I discovered, number one, I do put high priority on relationships. And so I spent my holidays building relationships, and my husband and I decided to basically do a homemade holiday challenge. And so most of the gifts that we gave, except close family members, but even for he and I, we did homemade gifts. That's time consuming. Okay? But it's in line with how I want my life to be going forward. So maybe it's not a terrible thing, even if it did take time away from the business. I left my job because of health issues. I was a teacher. I loved what I did. I got paid to make music with children all day long. I can't imagine a better way to spend my days. I went through an identity crisis after giving it up, and that was all because of health issues from stress. And so I can't push myself to the levels I used to push myself to when I was in my 20s and even my early 30s as far as productivity, because I'm now cashing the check that I wrote in my 20s and 30s. And things will have to be slower, and I will have to take time to relax and slow down. And my choices are accept that, work with that, work through it, make my plans with that in mind, or fight it and just burn myself out. There was also a spiritual or religious element to leaving my job. I do believe that having sought divine guidance, that God did say, "Yes, Elizabeth, it's time to go." And so I have to look at the priority that my faith is in my life. And that has to be accounted for in how I allot my time, or I will do with my time what I've watched people do with money. And it's very destructive with money, and it's equally destructive with time. Okay? I have known people very close to me who know that they're about to get some sort of a windfall, whether it's a tax refund or something of that nature. And so they go out and they pre-spend that amount because it's coming. And then when they get the actual check in hand, when the time gets there, then they spend that money again. And so now they're deeper in debt than they were before the windfall was ever on the radar. And so if I don't look at the priority that religion does take in my life and allocate time to it, because it is a priority in my life, it's going to steal time. I'm going to try and double spend time on the business and on spiritual things. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't necessarily listen to religious talks and things while I'm out walking and running and working out. And in fact, that works very, very well for me. It really is good for my mental health. But it does mean that if I try to plan my day and not realistically allocate for the efforts I'm going to put into spiritual things anyway, I'm going to be frustrated every day, like I have been for the past 6 weeks. I also have to accept that 7 years ago when I bought a house, I knew it needed work. And after I got into the house, I found out it needed a lot more work than I had originally supposed. And that's all water under the bridge. And sure, I was upset at the time, and I was never able to prove anything, et cetera, et cetera. So, it all landed on my shoulders. And, I can't just let the house go. It's bad for my mental health. I can't just let the yard go. It's bad for my mental health. And until I can make peace with a balance of having a decent looking yard, but maybe not a meticulously beautiful yard, or maybe not having the best vegetable garden in the town I live in, then that's got to be allocated in, and I've got to be realistic about my time. So I am changing my mindset. I am going to begin either today or tomorrow putting a process in place where I do a daily review, and it's a true weekly review and not just a regurgitation of my to-do list. What did I do well? Where do I need to improve? So I'm actually holding myself accountable so that I don't avoid these so much. I have, however, begun working through a book that I came across quite some time ago. It's called Starting from Zero, and it's actually aimed at more of a drop shipping type business model, which is not what I intend to do. But I decided, since I collected all this clutter, I'm going to either use it or lose it, and I'm holding myself to that. And right now the book is working for me. I have definitely defined what my overall business category is. And that is very, very good. On one hand, I could consider myself a lifelong learning coach or an online continuing ed support with an emphasis on self-directed learning. That is where my heart is. That is who I need to look at, because honestly, to me, those are my people. That's my tribe. That's who I am. I want to keep learning. I'm not at a point in my life where I can be a perpetual college student. That's expensive, and I don't have that kind of money. I also have other duties and other things pulling at my time. I can't be a perpetual full-time student. But I have the ability to sit down and deconstruct how I learn things, and then help you build systems to figure out how you can learn things and how we can keep the expenses down. And maybe you won't have a certificate at the end of it, but a certificate isn't always required. That's a balance you have to make with whatever you're doing. So What have I done? I've discovered a need for more accountability. And in that accountability, I need to be very realistic about who I am and what I do. I have started working through a book, and it's helping me define who I am. And as I define who I am, then I am defining what my business is. My goals that I have started making some progress on. I have started dumping the cyber clutter. In fact, I've probably dumped about 50 gigs of files in the past week. They're not useful. They're not helping me. They need to go. There's no sentimental value to them. I mean, I'm not throwing away digital photos of my babies, my kids when they were babies. That's ridiculous. But, 50 copies of the same PDF is ridiculous, and that's over. I have decided I'm going to face FOMO in the face. I'm just going to face it down. Yes, I may be missing out on things, but I'm missing out on more by not taking what I have and using it. And it is possible that I already know enough. I have decided that I am going to embrace my religious side because that has been very, very important in my learning. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That is very important to me. Religious learning has made a tremendous difference in the growth I've made in my life, and it will be a significant portion of my website. My website is not going to be aimed at trying to necessarily draw people into my faith, but it will be there for those who share my dedication to the spiritual and the religious side of life. For those who don't, there will still be plenty of things available because most of the systems about setting up learning and being able to learn in a less expensive, more organized way will still work. So, if you were my boss, the bottom line is yes, you should fire me. But if you were my boss, I would perhaps point out that I have made some realizations, and if you are growth-minded as I am learning from my mistakes, and that's a positive sign, and perhaps that's something that we would need to keep in mind as we decide whether or not I stay on with the company. And as for me, this has been a dream and a vision, honestly, for the past 20 years or more. And so since I'm the boss, I've decided to give myself another chance. So that's it. That's some of the realities from the ground up, is just figuring out how to hold yourself accountable and make yourself get the work done. And so I'm going to continue to work and be honest with you and let you see what this looks like as I try to get a website together and a business going. See you next time.